All right, guys, welcome back to What the Fat. Today is a podcast that I've been looking forward to doing for a very long time. One with someone I've been following on social media for a long time, and I think you guys will really love his story and come to love him for the person he is. And you guys know that I'm huge on this concept of like making positivity louder. And it was funny, I was talking to him a little bit, and he's wearing a shirt right now called "Be the Change You Wish to See," and he's been talking about it for a long time, and that's why we've just kind of clicked and really have the same passion for really helping people on a whole nother level. So today we have Josh Perry, a professional BMXer and someone who's experienced some of the most difficult trials and tribulations that one would ever imagine, and has literally come out and is still fighting today, and is someone who radiates positivity despite everything that's going on in his life. So I'm honored to have you on, man. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. I mean, I appreciate the kind words, the love and support. It's another day to be grateful for, and it's an honor to be speaking with you. So thank you.
Absolutely, man. Well, one of the things I want people to understand is, can you just give everyone a little bit of your background, like growing up, and then how you got into BMX? I'm sure there's people that are listening I was one of those guys. I was a huge BMX fan. And how did you kind of get into that?
So I grew up, born and raised Cape Cod, Massachusetts, and Little League is massive there. And so I started out with T-ball and just kept moving through, the ranks into Little League, and then started playing basketball and dabbling with skateboarding and rollerblading at the skate park. Just something that was, popping up at that time, and friends and I all, did it for fun. And then it was two things. One, I saw a kid on a BMX bike, and it was a friend of my older cousin, and I was like, wow, that looks cool. And then I also remember this one basketball game where I missed a shot. It was a very important shot. I was playing really well that day, and my coach just yelled at me about something obvious. And I was like, I saw what happened. Like, I was there. I know I missed. And it's just that moment that I'd been getting into BMX, and I was like, man, let me just try this out. It's, you can take it on your own terms. You can progress as much as you want. The freedom, I went through a rough childhood with a stepfather, and just being able to use my bike as transportation and an outlet, and it just kind of took over. And that's kind of where it started. It was just those elements coming together, and I wanted to pursue it.
I love that, man. I love it. So it really was a passion of yours growing up. And so how did you take that and really take it to the next level, where you started competing in events, and then eventually you had started having people come out and be like, I want to sponsor you to do all these events? How did it go from being a passion project to now being like, hey, I can do this professionally?
Yeah, so I started out, I was 13 when I got my first true BMX bike and going to skate parks and, getting into it. And then, so coming from school sports where you play other teams and competition, it just seemed like the natural step to get into the local amateur or beginner contests. And then each year I progressed more and more. And then I was 15 and 16, and I was going to regional contests for the amateur level, and I started winning them. And where there was like, $150 first prize, but then all, expenses paid for my mom and I to fly out to the West Coast to compete in the top 10 of the amateur U.S. riders. And then, it was just a natural first step, in trying to progress with the sport. And so then I started seeing some progress, and I was being exposed to, the pro level, pro riders, and just the potential and the possibilities for my life to take an alternative route while I was able to at the time and the age to do something I may not be able to do later on. And it just, it turned into, from a hobby, an interest, to like a passion, to just a way of life. And I was actually going to a vocational, technical high school, and I was in landscaping. And so I was 14, 15, started working for my mom's friend in the neighborhood, own landscaping company. And the way the school worked was I could go to academics 2 weeks and then go to work 2 weeks once I got to the middle of my 10th grade, if my grades were high enough.
Wow.
So I naturally did that and just used the money to travel. And then I got to the point where I finished my junior year, and I'm touring around, and I got a chance to go out to Greenville, North Carolina, where I lived for a while, to train with all the pros. The best pros were there. Dave Muir had his private facility, and I was just like, man, this is crazy. And an ultimatum came up one day with my boss. I was leaving for a contest that week, and I had to take Friday off, and it was a big contest. And he was like, you can go BMX or you can work for me. What do you want?
Wow.
And I just was like, well, I don't know if this opportunity is going to come up. So I actually, quit working for him, went on a road trip after the contest to train with all the guys in Greenville, and then just stayed there for months, to where my mom actually forgot I had school my senior year. missed the first month and a half, she got a note saying you're expelled for too many days being gone. You're welcome to come back next year. And I was like, Mom, I made a little bit. I think I made like $5,000 in 1 month doing tours with motocross dudes around Canada. And I was like, man, it's super cheap to live out here. It's a college town. I'm going to do this. I'm going to pursue this, and dropped out of high school. Ended up getting my GED out there, and just it's kind of the start of it. I lived out of my friend's storage closet in his like ECU apartment. That was my first living experience on my own.
Dude, I love that. I actually did a podcast recently talking like about this topic where people so often they get stuck, and you had a decision that came up where it was like, you're either going to work for me or you're going to pursue your passion. And you were like, well, I got one chance at this thing called life. Like, I'm going to pursue my passion. And that's amazing, man. I really think a lot of people resonate with that, because you have these people that are stuck and have these, sometimes it's an ultimatum. Sometimes it's I don't know if I want to go that route. It's too scary. You're like, I'm going to go on tour with some of the best people in the world. And even if it means me missing my senior year of high school just to do it because there's a passion. I love that mindset, man. I love it.
Yeah, it was just a vision I had, growing up, seeing those people doing that, and I wanted to do that. So it just, I don't know, at the time it just made sense and felt right. And I was actually being trained. I was actually working his business for him, like taking over as like the foreman, and he was training me to create my own business. And that's why I was in school and all that. So I was making really good money for being a teenager, landscaping on Cape Cod. And then I was like, man, I can go back to doing this later. I can go to school later, but my body won't be able to do this later. So
that's so true, man. So true. So what year was that? What year was that when you missed that?
So I was supposed to graduate 2007, and it was the winter of 2006. I went out there. I moved out there, actually. So I don't know. It's kind of rough. Like the year, kind of remember that now. It's crazy. It's been over like 12 years. But yeah, it was winter 2006. I actually moved out there and went home, got my things, and then moved back out there. And then 2007 was my first official year riding the pro level contest. That's
amazing, man. So you went pro, and you did all these contests for about 3 years, right? And then 2010, I've read an article and I've followed a lot of stuff, and I think we're going to name the entire segment of this. And you said a quote, and you said, "If I didn't hit my head, I'd be dead." And that happened in March. Was that March of 2010?
Yep.
So can you tell us a little bit about what happened then?
Okay, so leading up the year prior to March 2010, I rode my first X Games. I continued riding on the professional tours. I first left the country, going to Spain and France, and just all paid for, a sponsor of mine, to other contests, filming trips. And I was just like literally living my dream that I looked up to all these guys doing for so long. And at the same time, I'd been going in and out of urgent care and emergency room of these like crazy debilitating migraines and headaches. And, I was getting sick and like throwing up from them. That was so, nauseating, to the point where the last few times I went in, I was losing my vision. My vision was becoming blurred, doubled. I couldn't even see my own hand like in front of my face without seeing like 10 of them. And they kept telling me, "You're fine. You're young." At this time, it was November of 2009. I just turned 21. Like, "You're fine. You just have headaches. It's normal. Here's some Percocets. Here's some Vicodins." And the last few times I remember going in, I was, very ignorant to it at the time. But I was like, shouldn't you scan my brain, like a CT scan, an X-ray, an MRI, like something? Like, you're telling me I'm fine, but you haven't looked at anything. The blood work just says I'm fine. I'm in shape. I'm an athlete. I'm young. I'm fine, but I don't feel fine. And I remember when I was younger, I had migraines. My mom said like third or fourth grade, to where I just buried myself in my room in a pillow in the dark. And I was like, maybe they're just coming back. Maybe the doctor's right. And so moving to 2010, and I never took the pain pills because my system just can't handle them. The last time I went in, it was so bad. I took them on the way home, projectile vomited in the passenger side of the car, had to pull over, get out. And this was the first time I ever thought I was dying. I was throwing up so violently at the time. I didn't know this, but they told me a blood vessel had burst, but I was throwing up dark red blood all over the side of the road. And I'm just, I'm thinking I'm dead. But that was the only time I took them, was because it was so bad, and then stopped taking them after that.
Damn.
But yeah, leading up to March, I had learned so it's called a backflip tail whip. So when you do a backflip, but then you also kick the back end of the bike around. And I learned that a couple months prior. March, I was doing a variation of that into the foam pit. So the foam pit, for those who don't know, it's like gymnastics. We kind of stole that idea. But I was trying a variation of it. Basically, I was doing it the same trick, but instead of on a jump going straight, I was doing it on a quarter pipe. So you have to turn 180, so you land forward. And at the time, we didn't have the transition ramp from foam to real ramp. We have now padded ramps like gymnastics, but like a thin piece of plastic on top that we can ride away. We didn't have that then. So you had the foam pit and the real ramp. I did 10 in a row. Perfect. It felt so good. And I went and tried it on the real ramp, and fear kicked in, and I overcompensated the rotation because I was scared of under-rotating and landing on the top of the ramp. So I over-rotated and then got whiplash to my shoulder, hit my head, and got knocked out for like a couple seconds, my friend said. And so therefore I needed an MRI to check for, TBI, swelling, bleeding, all that. And I'll never forget this, sitting in the urgent care, waiting for the doctor to come back with my results. I'm by myself, just concussion checkup, the usual, like comes in, hey man, so no bleeding, no swelling, that checks out, but there's something in your brain that shouldn't be there. And from there, everything just shut down, and I was like, all right, what is this? And the only way to describe it is people talk about out of body experiences. And that was one of the first times I've ever experienced that, because then he kept going on to say, it's a brain tumor. It's a very large brain tumor. We don't know if it's cancerous or benign right now. It's going to require surgery, but in order to live, you need to have it taken out, and you'll be lucky to ride again, let alone walk, or you'll be lucky to walk, let alone ride again. And everything just shut down for me. And I was like, man, I'm about to die. I have a brain tumor. I didn't know the difference between cancerous, benign. I don't even think there's a difference when you told you have a brain tumor. And then to know how large it was. And I was just like, man, what do I do? I'm here by myself. What do I do with my things? What do I do with my family? I can't ride again. I just made it. I just rode X Games, and I'm hanging out with Dave Mura, the dude of BMX. And now it's about to be taken away.
That's crazy, man. So that kind of happened, and that was your kind of initial response is what the hell? How do I handle this? So then immediately did they kind of get you in to get that removed, or what was the next step?
So to be fair to them, I don't know, because I got up and just walked out, just autopilot kicked in, and I just walked out. And I was in shock. I went to my car or my truck, and I just sat there for 5-10 minutes, just sitting there. What do I do? Just started pouring, crying, and then just tried to call my mom, and I couldn't speak. And then, of course, being a mother, she knew something was wrong, and she still lived in Massachusetts at the time. And from there, I finally could speak, and I told her, and then we started breaking down. My best friend came out, picked me up. We just drove around, and then I think the next steps, I went in for a follow-up or something, and they referred me to a neurologist. And then, who I'd gone to previously told me I was fine as well, but didn't want to give me, a scan. Just keep taking the pain pills. Your eyes look okay with the light, all this stuff. And then the next step was just look for a surgeon. So luckily I lived, an hour and a half from Duke University at the time. Now I live, right down the road because I live out in Raleigh. But, came across Dr. Alan Friedman, supposed to be one of the top neurosurgeons in the world from all the stuff I was reading. And I was like, man, let's hit him up. And he actually looked at my MRI and had me there, and he actually moved patients out of the way to get me in sooner. And that's when he was like, yeah, if you kept on that path taking the pain pills and didn't hit your head, you had another month or so to live, because it was so large. And yeah, so he actually moved people out of his schedule to get me in, and it was successful. So I'm very grateful for that.
Man. And you were 21 years old at the time, right?
Yeah, turned 21 that November. So about 4 months into being 21.
So thankfully, he went in, he was able to remove this tumor. Did they find out, did they test it to see if it was benign or cancerous? Yeah,
so it was said to be benign. The complications of the surgery ended up making it about six and a half hours long, because it was to clear up the vision problem. It was wrapped around my optic nerve, and then it was wrapping itself around a main artery. So they, want to be very careful. And I actually met up with him again 6 years later. I had some follow-ups in between, but he remembered. It's crazy how brain surgeons are. Like, he remembered everything. He was like, yeah, I had like this either intern or resident with him, and he was trying to rush me. And I was like, do you know what this guy does on his bike? Like, he needs all of his function and every part of his body. So I want to take my time. And it was crazy because, I mean, he just remembered everything. But yeah, they said it was benign. And, you know, I didn't know the skull confused back together in 4 weeks, because I thought I was gone for a year. I was like, all right, see you later, BMX, for the next year, you know. But I was back on my bike 5 weeks later. So just cruising around, just getting the motions back. But yeah, it was crazy.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I'm glad. So they went in and they were able to find it. But the crazy thing about this, and a lot of people, it's scary in a sense that, like, you were walking around, riding around, and without really even having an idea that was kind of transpiring. And it took one random fall or spill for you to get in and finally get a scan to go, hey, something's wrong here. And thank God it happened in that way, and that they were able to get it out in time for that to happen. So what was the recovery process like? So you finished, they got it taken out, and then did you go back to riding right after that?
Yeah. So like I said, I didn't know it was only 4 weeks, you know, so the 4 week mark hit, you know, I've been counting down the days, the hours and minutes, and we went in for a follow-up, got another MRI, you know, everything looked what, like it was healing well. I actually have 4 titanium screws in my skull now from, you know, how they have to do all that. But yeah, he said everything looked well. Let's just take another week, you know, recover a little bit more, and then you can start riding around, just take it easy. And so my athletic trainer, she lives out here as well. I've been, you know, she's been working our contests since 2005. I met her in 2007. She helped me, you know, get back into things, and just started out just, you know, helmet, pads, just cruising around, just really learning how to balance again. Like, I've been walking, of course, but being on a bike, like even moving around, not even leaving the ground, which is so weird. It just felt so different. And so I just had to take it one step at a time, basically relearning how to ride ramps. And I remember just doing the simplest trick for the first time just was like game changing for me. And I was just so stoked. And then just, you know, little by little got into the swing of things. The one thing that gave me a problem was flipping and spinning. It took me a good couple of weeks to gain my confidence back. And it's just being in space and spinning and flipping after all the, you know, the meds I was on, the surgery and all that stuff just was so weird. But got back in the swing of things, and then it was, I believe, 12 or 13 weeks after the surgery and recovery that I was in England competing again, and made, I think I got 7th out of, you know, top 10 in the finals. So I was pretty stoked.
That's incredible, man. That shows, literally, like I said earlier, your resiliency is incredible. Like, to be able to come back after that and then not only ride your bike, but crush it. That's incredible, man. Speaks to your fortitude. So what happens then, you know, actually you have on your website, you have pictures, because I don't think people can really fathom, because sometimes when they see like, oh, the size of a tumor in the brain, like they think like, oh, it's just really small. Like, I was looking at the pictures and it's like, it is big. Like, it's not something that you would look at and be like, yeah, clearly something's wrong. So I'll link to that in the show notes so people can like go to it and see like, wow, this is what was going on. And you can walk around, people are like, there's no way I wouldn't feel that. And you're like, I didn't feel it. Like, it's not something that you feel that's going on. So after that, you continue crushing it. You're killing it on your bike. You're doing things. You're starting to relearn. And then what was it, about 2 years later? Was it 2 years later, a second diagnosis?
Yeah, it was November 2012. So a little over 2 years later. Yeah, I don't know. I was in India performing some shows with my friends, you know, some BMX demos. And I remember I went for an MRI checkup before I left, a couple of weeks before, maybe, or just recently before. I forget what it was. But I remember getting a message, like an email from my mom saying, hey, how you doing? Blah, blah, blah. You know, when you get back, we have to talk about something. And right then and there, I was like, I'm smart. I can connect what's going on. And I was like, just tell me, because I know obviously if it was something good, you'd tell me right now. So she told me. I had to argue with her for a little bit, but I had 3 days left of the trip. So she finally told me, and that same feeling of just like a world crushing in around me just happened again. And I was like, man, like really? Like, this is the second time now. And they're saying I have 2. They explained to me it was the complications from the artery and the optic nerve. They didn't want to hit it because I could have, the list of complications I had to sign off on were endless, but it was, stroke, paralysis, death, bleeding out, all these things. And so one area in the front and then the rear had grown back. And so I was emailing my doctor, or my surgeon, and I was like, hey man, do I need to come home now? Like, it's still very ignorant to it. And what do I do? I'm in India. Like, do I come back now? He's like, no, just, finish your trip, come home, we'll meet, and then we'll assess it from there. But, he led on to suggesting radiation because of, it just not being worth the risk of the same, outcome and, or worse. So I was like, man, now radiation, like, damn, like, all right, that sucks. So, thankfully a friend of mine helped me, Dr. Google doing a bunch of research on alternative options to radiation and came across a technology called gamma knife radiosurgery. And I remember reading the title, and I was like, surgery. Okay, gamma knife surgery. He said not to have surgery because it wasn't worth the risk. Then I started reading more about it, and I was like, oh, this is a non-invasive, technology. There's no, minus the name, there's no knife or surgery involved. The, success rates were amazing, and people were returning to work the next day, and all that. So I asked him about it, and he was like, yeah, it's great. And I remember being upset because I was like, why don't you mention that to begin with? Like, if you're going to agree with it, I mean, now I kind of assuming they don't have a gamma knife machine at Duke, so maybe that was why, politics or whatever. But I don't know. I was stoked to have come across that because I got back, and then 2 weeks later, I think it was, went in for the treatment. And it was like an MRI, but just less annoying because it didn't have sound.
That's amazing. And so they were able to kind of get those two out as well?
Yeah, so what they do with that is, they just take a computer and their technology has changed now to where before I had 4 screws anchored into my skull with a frame, and then they would lock you down onto a belt, like a conveyor belt type thing, like an MRI, and you go into a tube and there's just no noise, so it's, it's chill. MRIs, as are just loud and annoying. But they actually clip you in. And I remember getting the screws drilled into my head. You don't feel anything because you're numb. But at the same time, you're just sitting there vibrating. You can hear it. You can see things. And third one coming around, I just started getting nauseous. And I was like, I'm going to throw up in my lap. Like, this is crazy. And then they were done. But yeah, so at the time now they don't have anything. They just put you there and the computer sensors and all that does its job. But yeah, they clipped me in. I went back in, and they used a computer to target where all it's 180 degrees of radiation beams, I guess. And then they just target where they want to treat. And because of the different beams, it's not as detrimental to surrounding tissue like traditional radiation or other, alternatives. And they get together and then they do the treatment. And because I had 2, I had to come in and out a few times. But 4 years leading after that, they shrunk in size, and now the last year or 2 that I've gone in for checkups, they've been stabilized. And so they shrank and now they're stable. And that's best outcome for, my situation.
Undoubtedly, man. I think a lot of what we'll talk about in a little bit likely has contributed to it because you changed your entire lifestyle and a lot of different things to kind of say, you know what, I'm going to combat this and provide my body with the best opportunity to make do with that, which I think is extremely important. But before we get away from this segment, you told me before we jumped on there was a third, right? So there's one is devastating, right? Could literally crush someone to a point where their entire life takes a downhill spiral, and they're like, you know what, this is terrible. You came around and had a second diagnosis, and second diagnosis wasn't even one. They said there was 2.
Yeah.
And then now, most recently, a third. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so the third diagnosis was February of 2017, and I was, super confident. I have the video film for my Instagram story, and I just was talking about mindset. I've been doing this and that. I'm confident going into it. It's just going to be great. You got to think about the reality you want. And I remember going in, just another MRI checkup. It's been 2 years now since the last one because we're moving in those intervals, and I'm gonna be sweet. Yeah, so those 2 are, they're still stabilized. Nothing going on there, but now you have 2 new ones on the opposite side of your brain that are about the same size as the original 2 that had grown back, but that's what I was left with. And then, so when I had my gamma knife treatment, it was actually in Boston at Tufts Medical Center. And my family's from out there, and we figured the second time around, gamma knife, Boston seemed to be a good place for the gamma knife. And his name is Dr. Wu. He helped me out with that. So instantly got my MRI to him and just was asking him, what do I do? Like, and he's like, well, they're so small right now. They don't have, much of a risk factor, but, if as long as you're not having symptoms, just continue riding and, we'll assess it, another year follow up to see if anything's progressed, and we'll go from there. But just keep doing whatever you've been doing. And, I know you're mentally tough. We've talked a lot since then. So as long as it's not affecting you mentally, then there's nothing to do right now. Let's just monitor it. It doesn't have much of a risk. So it was interesting how the path of this has gone, because the first time I was diagnosed, it was just, devastating. I had never felt anything like it. It was just like, my world's over, life's over, I'm dead. Like how, why me? The victim mentality, like, what did I do? Am I a bad person? Like all these things. The second time, it was a little bit of that at first. And then the second half, it was just, all right, I did this once, let's do it again. These aren't as bad. There's 2 of them now, but we can move past it. I just started thinking about what I wanted in my life and just envisioning my future. And then, found Gamma Knife, and I was stoked about it. The third time, it was a split second of like, come on, man, like really, like why? Like I've been doing all these changes. I've been, living positively, trying to help people now. Like the biggest thing I've learned from all these is like my purpose. It was my purpose when I was younger was an outlet to get away from negativity, to, out of spite of some people doubting me, to live my dream. And now, like, I don't compete anymore. Like now my purpose is moving forward to help people. And so this third time around, I was just like, well, this is just, my reality, and I can choose to go one way or the other. And I've already done this twice of, overcoming it, and I want to continue doing that. So how do we use this? How do we use this to our advantage and others' advantage? Because I know in life, like through not even brain tumors, but all the injuries I've been through and the pain and suffering that I've put myself through to do what I want, some people would, shy away from that or give up. And that's one of the biggest things BMX taught me is you fall down, you get up and try again. So I applied it to life. And so the third time around, I was just like, man, like, how do I use this? How do I use this for marketing, for business, to help people? Like, how do I help myself and my goals? And that's just where I am now. It's just part of my reality. And I can't choose how I can choose how I move forward, but I can't choose what, the cards are dealt. Just how do you play them? And now I just want to help people and let them know, like, it's up to you. You can choose to take action in these areas. You can choose to think one way or another, and you can choose to believe what you're told. I call it noise, the outside influences. And it's just been something I'm grateful for now, because it's changed who I am internally, externally, like 180, and it saved my life.
Your mindset, man, is incredible, and I wish more people, and I think a lot of people will take away from this. Like, I love your perspective, just completely different perspective on life. And as I'm sitting here listening to you, it reminded me of like Tim Grover is a guy that he comes in, he works with us at Aspie a lot with some of the athletes we have in here. And his whole concept is like there's certain people in the world that are relentless. Like he talks about like Jordan and D-Wade and all these guys. And like I'm thinking about, I'm like, you're one of those guys that's just like absolutely relentless in a pursuit of not only what your mission is, but really taking the cards that are dealt to you and playing them to the best of your ability. And I think that's amazing.
Yeah, man, I appreciate that.
Absolutely. So I want to segue into this second segment, because this is really where we connected, where we first connected. And I think your whole concept, you talk a little bit about, you were introduced to a documentary. You're one of the only people that I know that's, first off, people hear athletes, they see athletes, and they're like, oh man, that guy's in shape, or they must take care of their bodies. Athletes are probably the worst, right? You know this. Like they eat like trash. They drink all these ridiculous energy drinks that like all day long, because they're just like, they're focused on their sport, right? They don't really focus on the nutrition aspect. But you were kind of unique in that you saw this documentary, I think it was called Food Matters, right? And that kind of made a shift for you. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So it was right around the time I had to go in for Gamma Knife, and my friend, so one of the things that's changed about me with these diagnoses is like the desire to learn and to learn about all sorts of things. And then that led me into nutrition. But yeah, he sent me this documentary. He's like, I know you guys like watching documentaries, check this one out. It's pretty cool. It's pretty simple. It's quick. And I was like, all right, cool. Like, I've been, Dave Mirra had mentioned, you should probably look into what you eat, work out a little bit, but like, you guys are so young, it doesn't even matter. Like, just keep doing what you're doing. And that was the mentality back then. So I saw the documentary and I was like, wow, okay, that changes things. Like, and I haven't watched it in so long, so I don't even know what my beliefs on it are now, but I do know that was such an important part of my life, because the way that they put the information and made it so simple and easy to comprehend about your choices and what you eat or what you don't eat and how that leads to all these different things was just like, man, like, okay, so probably drinking with the boys at night because, I'm hanging out with pros and we're just living the life in a college town, but not going to college. That's probably not good. Waking up and being hungover and going riding because Dave Mirra said, let's go riding at 10 a.m. That's probably not good either. But then, Sonic milkshakes at night and, Dr. Pepper because it's cheaper than water and all these processed foods because they're cheap and easy. I don't have to do anything. Throw them in the toaster oven. That's probably not good either. So the first phase of, changing was just, okay, well, let's eat healthier foods. But I still was doing some drinking and some soda and some, processed foods, but I was eating more healthy foods. And that's where it started. It was just the awareness. And then it was partly fear because I was like, man, like maybe that's what caused the brain tumors was just living this negative lifestyle of, different kind of stress, alcohol, processed food, tons of sugar, like, maybe that's what created it. I don't know. So that's where it started. It was like kind of fear-based, but more like motivation-based.
Right. And so that's interesting because so then you started eating better. You started eating more healthier options. But what really made the switch for you? You kind of got into keto and low carb. Where did that stem from? Where did you kind of hear about that?
So it was the end of 2013, and a girl I was dating at the time, she gave me a book called Grain Brain. And I was like, all right, let me check this out. She's like, I think you'll really like it. Check it out. And that blew my mind. It just changed me in so many ways. And I was like, okay, now I have to really, get rid of all this. I can't even have it just a couple times a week or on the weekends. Like I need to change. And then I was like, oh, fat's not bad. Like fat's good. Like, okay, let's start experimenting with this. And I remember because I went and reread it recently and he mentions keto like for like, I think a page or two, but that's where I started learning about high fat, low carb, low sugar, trying to eliminate gluten and grains and all this stuff and alcohol, of course. But there wasn't much of an emphasis on ketogenic, diet. It just, he brought it up, but there wasn't much of a plan. It just, his mission was about cutting out the grains, the gluten and how it affects the brain and blood sugar levels and all that. So that's when I first got exposed to it. So from then on, I was eating more fat. I was eating less carbs, still thinking healthy, sprouted grain bread and like fruits are still okay and all this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I'm healthy. I did lose about 10 pounds effortlessly because I cut out pasta, sugar, soda, energy drinks and all that stuff. So I was like, all right, this is working. And then from then on, I just started experimenting with different things. But it wasn't until that diagnosis in February where I had been learning a little bit more about keto and then got diagnosed. And I was like, all right, so I've like seen, some of the effects that are said to, help with tumors and cancer with eating a ketogenic diet, but I'm not really sure how to approach it. And so I just, ignorantly just was like, all right, there goes carbs, there goes fruits, this and that, let's up the fat, let's, keep protein. At the time, I wasn't really aware of moderate protein. I was just, I think, I weigh like 170 pretty stably now for like 2 years and like 3 years. And then I was like, all right, like 145 to 160 grams of protein a day, that's fine. Now that was another mindset shift, was to lower that even more. But that's when it started. And then I read Mark Sisson's book, The Keto Reset. I've been reading a little bit about, Dave Asprey's books and, Perlmutter's, Brain Maker book and like other things. Came across a podcast with Dr. D'Agostino and Joe Rogan, and then just started surrounding myself with all these sources of information, social media, finding different people. And I talked with Nicole from Oh My Keto, and she mentioned your book, and I was like, all right, let's get that. And so it really started last year, just, that diagnosis, that fear again, and just how do I transform this from fear to, taking action to help myself. And that's, now it's just part of my life.
That's incredible, man. I was talking recently with Christina Kerp about something similar, and it's amazing, and a lot of people underestimate the power of one, but like you picking, or your girlfriend at the time giving you that book, like literally changing your entire outlook on food. It's the same thing that happened with Christina. She read like a blog post about keto, and then now she's like this huge keto influencer, has the Castaway Kitchen, just launched a book called Made Whole, and like completely transformed her life. And now it's like that people underestimate that, like the power of one, like just giving someone that book, or people that are listening to this and may know someone who's in a similar situation that you're in, and letting them hear it. And it's like you don't understand the power impact that can make. So I'm like, to me, that's so gratifying. It's so satisfying that someone would give you that book and it completely transformed your life and like how you eat now. And we'll get into a little bit some of the stuff you're doing now that's literally, I think, leading the education, helping transform a lot of people's mindset about nutrition and food. And it's just amazing. I think that power of one is often underestimated.
Yeah, it seriously is. And I actually shared on my story on Instagram, when I got the book, when I was reading it, just different things I was, learning from it. And I actually connected me with another guy from Massachusetts who's 21, and he's brain tumor survivor. His mom sent him my ESPN article we did about my third diagnosis and eating high fat, low carb. Wasn't keto yet, but then he got the book. And before he reached out, he had bought it, and then he started reading it, and then he reached out and he's like, hey man, like, I see that you're doing some consulting with helping people, live healthier, and now you're getting into the keto world, like, and helping them with using it as a tool. I'm still going through focal seizures every day, and, you're from the same area I'm from, and like, can you help me? And I was like, yeah, dude, of course. And now it's been 3 weeks, and it's been a cool partnership because of just sharing information. But he went from multiple focal seizures a day to now one a day, if any. And he's lost 10 pounds, and his mom's on the ketogenic diet now. And it just came from, my keto Nicole sharing me about your book, and then me sharing about your book. And then now, it's amazing. And that's just the power of sharing. And that's what I learned from the first diagnosis. Like, why is this happening to me? God must have a better, higher plan for me to take this because I'm able to take it and share it with others. And then that's where my why or my purpose came from. And 2016 was my last year competing, and now I'm just trying to help people and do what I can.
Man, I got goosebumps. These guys are laughing. I got goosebumps because that's literally what it's all about. I love that, and I think that's why I love surrounding people like you. And I think it's great. Like I talked about this the other day, where like I only follow certain people on social media. Like people talk about social media being bad. I think social media can be a great tool if you surround yourself. Like I get up and it's like, oh, like Josh's post is the first things I see, and I know it's not going to be something that's beating someone else down or something that's ridiculous. Like it's cool. Let's talk about fear and like motivating and inspiring others. And like that's what I just want to be around. And I hope like this podcast and several other things that I know we're going to continue to do is just shedding light. It's amazing. It's amazing. I want people to understand what a day in your life looks like from an eating perspective now, because now you eat. I see some of the stuff that you post and everything like that. What does it look like? Can you give people a little insight on that?
So it's evolved quite a bit, but now I love, the 2 big meals a day. I love intermittent fasting. I transitioned to doing that, not so much because I needed to, but doing the fat coffee in the morning, but just because I enjoyed it. And I'm not trying to lose body fat. I have without, trying to, but I just kind of enjoyed it. I never drank coffee until I read Perlmutter's work and about how, proper, organic, clean coffee is good for your brain as long as it doesn't have sugar in it. And I was like, all right. So my mom's like, wow, you drink more coffee than I do now. And I'm like, I don't know. It's good for you. But I actually enjoy it. So it transitioned from, the fat coffee every morning. Just, I had been on that kick for a while, and to the 3 large meals a day, no snacks, to 2 meals a day. And then if I have a hard workout day and a training day on the bike, I'll have, a snack here and there. But typically now, like, I'm at the point where I have black coffee, or I have apple cider water or apple cider vinegar and water, and then wait till, it depends on, so the intermittent fasting window can vary for people, but it depends on what I did yesterday, what I'm doing that day. If I eat, let's say at 11 a.m. or at 2 p.m., and then I do the 6 to 8 hour eating window after that. But typically, man, like, it's just great because I eat between 12 and 2, last meal between 6:30 and 8, and I don't feel the need to eat. And I find that I only get hungry if I'm bored.
Yes.
And I'm like, let's just eat something. Oh, I don't need to, So now it's just, like today I had a black coffee, and then it's a little after 1 now. I put in some unsalted grass-fed Kerrygold butter and mixed it up just because it tastes good, and had that at I think 11:30. And so I use the Zero app to help me sometimes, keep track of that. And it was like 16 and a half hours. And I was like, all right, cool, let's do that. And I still haven't eaten yet. And I'm not hungry. I still have half my coffee to finish. But yeah, just black coffee or fat coffee, then 2 meals a day.
I love it. And do you like track your macros, or do you just kind of eat intuitively? Like, I know by this time you've been doing it for so long.
What's that? You broke up for a minute.
Oh, sorry. I said, do you track your macros, or do you kind of just eat intuitively? Like, hey, I've been eating this way for so long. This is the way I do it.
Okay. Yes. So, man, since like 2014, I started tracking macros and trying to experiment with stuff. But then, really, this last year, I kind of, I went through a phase where I was like, I'm all in or out something. So I was like, I need to make sure I'm doing this correctly. And then I just became stressful, and I was like, I didn't get my macros in today. Like, and then I started learning about keto and, how we have all these fat stores, and like, I'm going to be fine. It actually came from when I first got into promoters work, and I went through a phase. I broke up with a girlfriend. I got depressed for a while. She actually was with me through the brain tumor stuff. So it was like this weird dependency I felt that I needed with her. And then that just led me down this route of sugar being bad, and I stopped eating, and I was dropped to 145 pounds, where my friend was like, dude, you're sick. You need to do something. And thankfully I've got, past that. But, then macros came, and it was another stressor. I was just like, man, like I'm trying too hard. And then I kind of just got intuitive about it. And I was like, all right, I know now from doing this and calculating, I simply just use a scale to make sure I'm not eating too much protein or not eating enough, because that was a thing for a minute. But I just, one of my meals a day is I love Mark Sisson's big ass salad. I just take a bunch of different leafy greens, chop them up, throw in a bowl, whole avocado, different vegetables, whether it's, it could be asparagus and onions and peppers or whatever. And then do some walnuts, I do his Primal Kitchen dressing and some extra olive oil on top. And then I do either baked chicken thigh, or we mix it up. We do a big ass salad with like a burger, and do like a horseradish on top. And that's one meal. You get all these vegetables, you get all this fiber, you get everything you need. And then I feel light, and I go ride, or I rode before it, and then I have that after. So it's tracking macros now. I just, every once in a while I do it just because like, let's see what I'm up to today. But I mean, I'm at the point now where I just consume vegetables and then some nuts here and there, avocados. So my carb source, like, I don't eat sweet potatoes anymore. I don't mess with quinoa. If I do fruit, it's once in a blue moon. It's just some berries and like a smoothie I made. So that's, it just became too stressful. And I was just like, I've been doing it long enough. I'll just kind of look at what I'm doing and just stay on track.
I'm with you, man. I'm with you on that. I love the big ass salad thing. I'm big into Cobb salads. Like I have a meeting here in a little bit, and I'm gonna meet someone, and they're like, hey, can we make sure we find some place that has a good Cobb? I said, you don't have to tell me. Like I'm all in on the Cobb salads. That's great. I'm with you. What excites you most about the keto space, from when you started looking into it to where it is now? What kind of excites you about it?
So I got into all this stuff about nutrition and health for my brain. And so learning more about the effects it has on the brain is just, it's never ending of excitement for me, especially now, like helping a younger person with seizures. And I'm not a doctor. I can't guarantee this stuff, but I can help you, if that's what you want. And him having success with that type of stuff, and Dr. D'Agostino's work about, everything about that, like that's just so awesome. But I think the number one exciting thing for me is the empowerment and the liberation of food and addiction to food and stressful, health habits. Like it's just, once you transition properly to it and you adapt and you learn what works for you in your lifestyle, just the empowerment you have from it is just amazing. And like, the more we talk about it, the more people try it properly and just don't try to do it overnight and using all these supplements. Like it's an amazing tool. And, I think that's the most exciting thing for me, is to be able to share that with people and then be like, wow, this is easy. I'm saving money. Actually, I'm like losing weight. I like feel better. And like, wow. So like, I don't know. It's just the best thing for me.
Absolutely. I'm 100% in agreement, man. Your protocol, you talked a little bit about 2 times a day eating. What about exercise and supplementation? What does that look like on a daily basis?
So I used to do it differently with supplements. I take a bunch of organic vitamins, and I actually just started using a CBD oil from I watched Broken Brain, the docuseries from Mark Hyman, and they were talking about that with TBIs and stuff and just overall brain health. But I used to take my vitamins in the morning, and then I was learning, because especially the CBD oil being an MCT oil, it breaks your fast to a degree. And I was like, all right, so I just kind of wait till I have my first meal to have all my vitamins. But yeah, like a regular day of the week, my girlfriend and I wake up usually about 7:30. We get on our stationary bikes or road bikes on a trainer in the garage. We do about 30 to 45 minutes on that at a what I learned from Mark Sisson and Dr. Phil Mapatone, the max aerobic heart rate base. And we just pedal with our heart rate monitors. We have a TV down there set up like a small TV, and we just watch a Netflix episode and just pedal and then or talk, whatever. And then we go to the gym. And so our gym regimen is Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I'm on a different schedule than her or program because I'm doing more athletic, based training to protect me and be able to ride properly. But Monday, Wednesday, Friday are our strength days. So we do, our weights and our, lifting and all that. Tuesday and Thursday is when I do rings and bar, like a lot of core and shoulder, upper body, like just, I guess, calisthenics type workouts and stuff like that. And then I'll do like different intervals on the bike after that and stuff like that, just to, get that temporary stress in there and help, with endurance and all that stuff. So yeah, it's just 5 days a week. We go to the gym, and then anywhere now from like 3 to 6 days a week, it just varies that I'll ride on top of that. And that's about an hour and a half to 3 hours, depending on a bunch of different variables. And so now that I'm not competing anymore, my focus on trying to progress with riding isn't there. It's just maintain. So as long as I'm doing the same tricks and I'm not falling on those tricks, I'm happy. So I think I actually work out more than I ride now.
That's great. Now, what would you recommend, or any of your friends or colleagues or anyone that is in BMX or any type of sport like that, have you seen them sort of adopt a ketogenic approach, or would you recommend that they do? And if so, why?
So I actually got into it with a friend of mine. I think it was like end of the 2016 year is when we both started trying it. And I learned we did it improperly because we were still training and competing at the same level. And we tried going low carb way too soon, to where he was like, dude, I'm peeing all these blood strips and I'm like dark purple or whatever. And I'm just like, I feel like shit, man. And like, I started getting like just drowsy. Like, I'm just like, man, like this sucks. Like, and then, I learned after there's an adaptation phase that could last up to 6 months. And so I know Mark Sisson talks about, he's like, yeah, like a lot of my athletes that I coach, I'm like, yeah, are you willing to take a year off to do this properly, to build up your endurance and your strength and adaptation to be able to, kill it the next year. So when I have talked to some athletes in BMX, I'm like, yeah, like it's good to do, but I would recommend just like resetting everything, and like just eating cleaner and more high fat, lower carb. But don't try going into full keto until you're at a competition, so that way you can adjust when things come up, because you're going to lose, your endurance on the bike. It's going to go down. Your strength output's going to go down, and it's going to be fine because it's going to come back later on as long as you don't go off the program. But it's definitely something that I would suggest, just from my little bit of learning about this, is to just adapt at an off-season point, and then that way you can, get into it 100%, give it a valid effort, and then move forward. But then also what I experimented for a little bit with was, targeted keto. So using my, carbs right before going to session, because our sport's weird. And I've been trying to figure it out with my girlfriend, who's a licensed athletic trainer, and a bunch of other people that are in this. Like, how do we, our sport is like 60-second runs at a contest, but you're chilling on the ramp, getting ready to go off a jump, but then you're using a lot of force to do the trick. So it's like, I don't know, like gymnastics or like MMA, like what do we compare it to? So, and so, yeah, it's just been an experimenting phase and just trying to figure out what works. But it personally comes down to the goals, like what are they trying to accomplish? Why? And then are you willing to do it at the right time or take some time off? And that's what I recommend.
I love it, and I couldn't agree more, in a sense that I tell people all the time, whatever sport they're in or whatever they're participating in, just do it in the off season. Like in the midst of your season, it's probably not the best to do it and allow yourself that adaptation. But I think for BMXers and anyone involved in sports like that, like you have a lot of, I'm sure you see it all the time, is like a lot of brain injury from people falling, hitting, and we know from more and more research that when you do get that brain injury, your brain becomes temporarily insulin resistant. It can't use glucose or insulin as well, but it can use ketones. So properly fueling it, I think that's like the longevity. We do a lot with football athletes who get traumatic brain injury all the time. And it's similar in that regard. Like, even though it's difficult to get them to not eat all carbs and a ton of fast food, it's beneficial for those that see the long-term vision and long-term plan. Like, all right, maybe I can get 2 or 3 or more years out of my career and then have a life after the game, versus some of these guys who are coming out, I'm sure, from BMX, and they're just not the same. They're not the same mentally because of what transpired. So I want to shift to this last segment. I want to be conscious of your time, and I really wanted to talk about your resiliency and bring that back up again. And one of the things we've talked about is you went through this period where you were at the peak of performance, right? You were X Games, peak performance. You had these diagnoses. And yet after all this, you watched this documentary, you realized that like health is an important factor from a nutritional standpoint. It plays a big factor. You talk a little bit about sponsors, and I'm sure that that's big in BMX and a lot of these different sports. It's like sponsors probably approach you all the time. And for someone starting out, you're young and getting all these people who are like, hey, here's some money or here's some sponsorship deals that we can offer you. And there's a lot that came to you that you didn't agree with, so to speak, or like it didn't line up with your vision and mission, and you turned them down. Like, can you talk about like why you would do something like that? Like, what kind of was your thought of like, hey, here's these people that are throwing themselves out at me, but like you're one of those people that said, you know what, if it doesn't align with my mission, I'm not going to take that on.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly this, be the change you want to see. And I take that as for walking my talk. So at the time, I'm doing BMX stunt shows for a team that I've been doing them with since 2009, and they had a co-sponsor of energy drink. So I'm, at the time I was drinking them back then. And then as I moved forward, I was like, no, like I went to the sugar-free ones, and then I went to, no, I don't want any of them. But I still had to wear a shirt by contract and do the shows that are painted, the ramps are painted with their logo. And that last year of 2016 is when I did the last one for them. And it was ironically my last year competing because of sponsorship issues. But I was just like, man, like I'm trying to make a change, and I'm living, walking my talk, I'm living that. But then I'm like giving mixed messages by representing this company, even though I'm not consuming it. The audience doesn't know that, but I still have a shirt on, like I'm still riding these ramps. And it just came down to, my purpose is to help people and to represent, a non-hypocritical message, so, what can I do? And I was like, I mean, am I in integrity right now with myself by saying, no, don't drink this, but then I'm taking a paycheck for them? And it wasn't enough to be able to take a paycheck for them and then like lobby against them. So it was just, what do I do? And, I wanted to be clear and transparent with who I am and what I'm doing, and everything I share, I'm 100% authentic, I'm transparent, I'm honest, and I have nothing to hide. And anyone asks me anything, I tell them. And so it was a difficult decision because I knew that would mess up my next year of being able to compete because of travel expenses. Everything is out of the States now primarily, but 1 contest, 2 contests. So, I mean, you have to get like first place just to break even if you don't have a sponsor helping you. So I was like, man, like that doesn't seem logical anymore. I'm almost 30 now, and like my priorities are shifting. So, and if I get hurt, what do I do then? And so I was like, man, like I want to represent something that's true. And I see a lot of, hypocrisy in the world, a lot of, fakeness, and a lot of, just running their mouths, but not, leading up to it with their actions. And I was like, man, this is gonna suck for a little bit. And it's been tough, man. Like it's been real tough, but I know later down the road, just like being able to connect with you is an opportunity that's come from that. And, other people that I look up to and other people I didn't even know that I connected with. And it's because of who I am and how I'm walking my talk, and I'm being the change that I want to see. And just like any decision for something you want and, striving for greatness, it's never easy, but I knew that it was the right thing to do and it would work out for me in the long run. And I'm still holding on to that faith. But it's just at the end of the day, it was easy because it was just like, who am I? What do I want to be? Or what do I want to represent? And how do I want people to view me? And it just doesn't align with my core values anymore.
And that, my friend, is why you will always win. I think that's incredible. I know that for sure, and we'll have to talk another day. But I definitely would love to figure out a way to team up and help support that, because very rarely do you find people. And I talked about this on an earlier podcast. I talked about authenticity and transparency always wins. Like, even though in the short term, cool, getting a sponsorship or like selling out for a company or whatever, like that may work here. But like the long game is built on audience providing true value in a sense that's authentic and transparent and saying, I'm here for your greater good. I'm here to serve. And that's one of the things that really I'm actually the podcast that's launching this Friday. I talk a little bit about, we work with Tony Robbins. And one of the things that really like struck a chord with me was we were working with him behind the scenes, and he goes, he felt like shit. Like he was sicker than a dog. And we're like, you know what, man, you're still going to go crush it. And like, he looked like face like this. He goes, I know I'm going to crush it. He goes, cause I'm here to serve. And like, I was like, damn, like that struck a chord with me, because like this guy who people look at and they see the documentary, I'm Not Your Guru, or they don't really understand him, but they see it and he's like, I'm literally here to serve. And I feel the same way. And I know you do, in a sense that you have so much to give that if you maintain that authenticity and that transparency, I promise you at the end, you'll win no matter what. No matter what. Yeah,
I appreciate that, man. And yeah, like I said, it's been a struggle, but learning my purpose to serve other people, and then reading different books like Simon Sinek's, How Great Leaders Inspire Action, Start With Why. And then The Go-Giver was a recent book that I read that was pretty cool, how it taught about serving people. And then, just recently, a month ago from today, I lost my little brother in a tragic accident. And then that brought up so much doubt and like, why do anything, but then it came back to my purpose. I'm here to serve people. He was on a path to trying to help people, and he was proud of me for doing that. And so all these elements in my life, it went from why me to like, I know why me. And now just trying to navigate the path and figure out how to make it work. And so I appreciate that. And that's 100% how I believe. And I love Tony, like just his mentality. He's helped me in so many ways, just learning about him and what he does. And, if you're serving people, you're trying to make a difference in the world, then, it's all love. It's all good.
It's amazing, man. I know for a fact there's going to be thousands, tens of thousands of people that are going to listen to this podcast and take away not only the information that you're talking about, but you as a person, and understand how genuine and authentic you are, and the trials and tribulations you faced in a short time already, literally within the last 10 years or 5 years of everything really transpiring. Like, people are going to understand this guy still has that outlook on life. And like, I'm going to let someone who cut me off this morning driving to work ruin my week. Like, are you fucking kidding me? Like that's the thing that's really going to change people's mindset, is like, you've had so many trials and tribulations, and we all do, but your outlook and ability to go, you know what, it doesn't matter. Like, all these things happen to me. There's a greater purpose in my life, and I want to give back to people in a big, big way. Like, I'm super excited to watch you continue to grow, and I'm going to be front row rooting you along every step of the way, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And, like you said, it's just a choice, but it's hard. It's not easy, but it's a simple choice. And I mean, another wake up call I had was I flatlined at a contest one year, and fell from really high over the bars, and then just instantly snoring, they said. And that was another wake up call. So I've had these lessons like, wake up, Josh, wake up, come on, do this. Like, and then now I'm at the point where like, all right, I don't need any more lessons. I'm good. Like, I found my purpose.
I got it.
And we've all been there. Like, oh, this asshole cut me off, or I stubbed my toe, or what, I dropped this plate and it shattered. Like, I mean, it happens, and it's not easy, but it's just, the willingness to want to strive to rise above the negativity and make that choice is, it's always there. And there's lessons going to come, every time, and opportunities to do it. So it's just, being clear with your vision and trying to learn, be open-minded. And what is Jim Carrey's, like, one of my favorite quote from him is, life doesn't happen to you. It happens for you, but you have to choose to see it that way. And that's just one of my favorite things.
Powerful, man. It's all about perspective. All about perspective.
Exactly.
Well, the last two things I want to wrap up with is what is Josh working on? Like, what are some things that are exciting where people can be like, because I know for a fact people are going to want to follow you and follow along this journey. Like, what are some exciting things that you have going on? You talked a little bit about you and your girlfriend Get Up. You got this cool exercise program and everything you got going on. You're eating keto. You're changing it up all the time. What are some other things that you have going on?
So one of my biggest goals and dream is a passion of mine. It's taking like 15 years or more of doing BMX stunt shows and trying to tie it into a wellness BMX stunt show to where we're raising money for brain tumor patients and brain injury patients directly. There's lots of research and awareness, and there's not enough for the people that are going through it. And I was one of them many times. So we're calling it the Brainy BMX Stunt Shows. And I've actually partnered up with what's called the Athlete Recovery Fund. And they're a nonprofit for action sports professional athletes that helped me in 2010 with medical coverage and flying my parents out. And so we've teamed up together to start the beginning phase of trying to get awareness and raising funds to put on these great events, to share this information in a cool, manner that people will gravitate towards and get value from, but then also give them entertainment, give them some inspiration, but then also raise money for people that need it and that they can apply for directly. And then beyond that, I'm just trying to navigate my path from, professional athlete to how do I take this information, these experiences, and help people. In two directions I'm going is I want to become a professional speaker with motivational speaking. And I actually did my first speaking engagement at the University of Florida in April.
Oh,
and
nice.
I actually got an opportunity in March to do another one at their annual retail conference center. But I really want to get into that path. I think that's something that people have been telling me for years, and then now it makes sense, and I just need to keep practicing, get that confidence, and see what I can do with that, and just reverse engineer BMX and with this path. And then beyond that, I'm just trying to get more into developing a business of helping people, like coaching and developing an online course or just different workbooks, or just anything I can take who I am and everything I've learned and I'm continuing to learn to give that to people at in a manner so I can make a living and not have to go back to the old ways of BMX. And, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to sell out for things, but, trying to figure out a way creatively to stay in the space that I want to be in, providing value for people, serving people, and aligning with my core values. And so.
I love that, man.
Yeah.
I love that. And if there's any way that I can help, and I think we'll talk later on, but I think there's some ways that we could definitely team up and partner on some initiatives, because I thoroughly believe I'm a big person. I bet on the horse or the jockey. Like I bet on that, and you're one of those guys I bet on. And I know that this is just the beginning for you. And whatever you do, whether it's motivational speaking or going around doing some type of coaching, like I'm a huge supporter of it because I know you're doing things the right way. So I love that. Now, for those, to kind of wrap things up, where can people find you? Throw out your social media links. We'll link them all in the bio as well, so if you could send those over after. But on Instagram, which is where we connected, but Facebook, what else do you got?
So every social media platform that I have and that's out there, I guess, that I use, even like LinkedIn, like everything is just Josh Perry BMX. I'm most active on Instagram, but then I share things to Twitter or Facebook. I have my moments with Twitter, depending on the year, where I'm like, oh, this is cool, let me use this. But usually it's just Instagram. I had a blog, dailybrainstorms.com, but it recently just got hacked. So I got to sort that out. I have everything saved, at least. I'm very particular about saving things to my external drive. But everything is just easy at Perry BMX. And then my website's just joshperrybmx.com. And and then the BMX like wellness stunt show I'm working on and trying to manifest that is just athleterecoveryfund.org/Josh-Perry. And I put together, an amateur video of me, talking about it and just all the things that we need and what we're looking to do and all that. And it's got some riding mix in there and stuff. But so that's all me and where I'm at. And I do my best to respond to every single comment on anything in DM. And I actually got someone gave me a compliment about how like awesome it is that I respond to everyone, and that just comes back from when I was 16. One of my favorite pro riders, he responded. I was like, man, I'm gonna do that for everyone.
It's amazing, man, and that matters. Trust me, it does. So many people get messages and things like that, and they just brush them off. You're gonna win in the long term. I promise you.
Yeah.
Well, man, I don't want to take up any more of your time. I appreciate you so much for coming on. I know this is going to resonate with so many people. And literally, if there's just one person, and I know there's going to be multiple, that come away with some tidbit from this, and I know they're going to follow you and hopefully follow along the journey of you doing amazing things. But I really appreciate you coming on, man. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, no, thank you, man. It's an honor to connect and to be able to share appreciate the love and support. So thank you.
Absolutely, brother. Thank you.